My name is Elijah Hart. I'm 34 years old. I run a private investment firm in Denver and pride myself on being deliberate, measured, and painfully thorough in both business and life. I don't believe in chaos. I believe in structure, loyalty, and commitment. When I asked Amelia to marry me, it wasn't on a whim. It was after 3 years of shared routines, long conversations, and what I thought was mutual respect. The morning of our wedding, I believed I was making the safest, most heartfelt decision of my life. I was wrong. The wedding was small but elegant. White lilies, soft jazz, champagne bubbles rising like tiny blessings. My mother sat in the second row, composed, her eyes never leaving mine. She's a woman of intuition, silent, stoic, the kind of woman who doesn't speak unless she's certain her words will leave an impact. When I walked Amelia down the aisle, I thought I saw something flicker across my mother's face, an uneasiness, a warning. But I was too wrapped in the moment to ask. I should have asked. It was exactly 3 hours after we exchanged vows that she pulled me aside, not with drama, not with panic, but with the kind of calm that makes your skin crawl. We were at the reception, still in our tux and gown, cutting cake and shaking hands. My mother took my arm, leaned in close, and said only this: "We need to talk. Privately, now." She never raised her voice. That's how I knew it was serious. In a quiet room, just off the banquet hall, she handed me her phone. A video was already paused, her thumb hovering over the play icon. "I didn't want to believe it," she whispered, "but you need to see this before the night goes any further." And then she pressed play. What I saw rewrote everything I thought I knew about Amelia. There she was, my wife, 2 weeks before the wedding, in a hotel suite that wasn't hers, with a man whose name I also knew, Jared, my best friend since college. I didn't speak, I didn't breathe, I didn't storm out or make a scene. I just nodded, handed the phone back, and stared at the wall for a full minute. My mother stood beside me saying nothing. That's how she's always loved me, by standing close, not by interfering. And in that stillness, I made a decision that most men wouldn't have the strength to make. I was going to end the marriage, tonight, quietly, efficiently, with precision. She had chosen betrayal. I would now choose control. I walked back out, smiled at guests, and toasted with the same calm hands I used to sign multi-million-dollar deals. I watched her laugh with my father, hug my nieces, pretend I watched the show unfold, fully aware that I'd be shutting it down by midnight. I wasn't angry. I wasn't heartbroken. I was wide awake, and for the first time in years, I saw her clearly, not as my bride, but as my opponent. The drive home from the reception felt surreal. Amelia sat beside me in the passenger seat, her hand resting lightly on mine. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I let her speak about the night, how magical it was, how happy she felt, how she couldn't wait for the honeymoon. Each word sounded like glass shattering in slow motion. I didn't answer. I just kept driving, my mind not on the road, but on the video, and everything it quietly destroyed. I replayed moments in my head. Nights she came home late, the sudden change in passwords, the new perfume she said was a gift from a coworker. And Jared, always around, always helpful, always too present. I had trusted them both without hesitation. That was my flaw. I never assumed the people I loved would lie with such ease. But betrayal never shouts. It whispers, and in hindsight, I realized I'd ignored every whisper until it turned into a scream I could no longer unhear. That night, after she fell asleep, still in her makeup, still in her wedding dress, I went into my home office and opened a locked drawer. Inside were 3 documents I had prepared a year ago for business contingencies: a prenuptial agreement, a personal non-disclosure, and a clause I never thought I'd use: An emergency annulment agreement drafted at my mother's insistence. Hope for the best, she once said, but always prepare like you're walking into a storm. I had smiled then, but now I understood the gravity behind her words. By morning she'd wake up to a quiet but undeniable truth. I had already spoken to my attorney. The papers would be delivered by noon. There would be no screaming, no begging, no public humiliation, just silence, signatures, and a marriage that would vanish before the ink on our license had even dried. I wasn't seeking revenge. I was reclaiming my dignity, not with fists or fire, but with clarity and control, the kind that leaves no mess, just distance. The hardest part wasn't ending it. The hardest part was mourning the version of myself that believed in her, that trusted too easily, that thought love alone was enough. I had given Amelia everything I knew to give: patience, protection, partnership. But when someone feeds you lies with a smile, they don't deserve your sorrow, they deserve your silence. And silence, when wielded with precision, is the loudest thing in the room. I didn't sleep that night, not out of pain but awareness. I saw the whole web now, how Jared had inserted himself into every phase of our relationship, how she played both sides effortlessly, how long I had been surrounded by shadows masquerading as loyalty. It hurt, but not in the way she probably expected. It hurt because I had almost let that poison become permanent. But now I had a scalpel, and I was cutting it out. I called my lawyer at 6:15 a.m. sharp. He was surprised to hear from me so early, but not confused. He had always known I was the kind of man who only acted after everything was in place. "Is it time?" he asked. I gave him a single word: yes. Within an hour the documents were in motion. Amelia would be served privately, without spectacle. There would be no drawn-out court drama, just a clean, cold line drawn through what was once supposed to be forever. After that call, I sat at my desk and opened another file. A different one. This wasn't legal paperwork. This was personal. A file I had been building for months. Quietly, subtly. Emails, timestamps, receipts. Not because I expected betrayal, but because I had long ago learned that people reveal their truth in details. Amelia had slipped more times than she realized. Her lies were neat, but they weren't invisible. I'd started collecting these digital breadcrumbs out of instinct. Now they were my protection. Jared was harder. He was meticulous, almost surgical in how he moved. But people like him always leave traces when they get too confident. I found deleted messages between them using recovery software. One even joked about the wedding cake, as if I were a joke, an obstacle rather than a partner. I didn't need proof to hurt them. I needed it to stay clean while removing them from my life without a stain. Revenge wasn't my goal. My goal was erasure. I transferred Amelia's access out of my personal and business accounts before sunrise. My assistant, who had always been fiercely loyal, was instructed to handle all communications through me. Amelia would wake up to find that the financial doors had quietly closed overnight. No confrontation, just a quiet exhale as the doors locked behind her. Jared, on the other hand, didn't yet know what was coming. But I had a plan for him too, one that would speak without a single word. See, Jared had just launched a startup with seed funding from one of my contacts. He had no idea the investor was also a client of mine. I made one phone call, not with accusations, not with emotion, but with questions. Just enough to plant a seed of doubt. Just enough to rattle the chain. The rest would fall apart on its own. In my world, trust isn't given, it's rented. And once doubt enters the room, rent's overdue. I didn't need a stage. I didn't need a microphone. My strength wasn't in yelling or crying. It was in precision, quiet moves, sharp exits. I wanted them to wonder when it started, how I found out, how far ahead I was. I wanted them to realize that while they were playing a game, I had built the board. And now I was folding it closed. Without anger, without noise, just strategy. Emilia didn't speak to me for hours after receiving the papers. Not at first. She sat at the dining table, robe wrapped around her like armor, eyes scanning every line like the words might somehow undo themselves. She looked up at me once, trying to find softness, maybe a crack in my expression. There was none. I wasn't angry. I was finished. "That's harder to argue with," she asked one question. "Is this really what you want?" I didn't answer. I simply stood, picked up my coffee, and walked away. Later that day, she called her sister in a panic. I overheard parts of the conversation from the hallway, not because I was eavesdropping, but because she no longer cared to keep secrets. Her voice was trembling, broken, and for a moment I felt a pang of something. Not love, not regret, just sadness. That a person I once cherished had become this small, this desperate, this unrecognizable. But I didn't step in. She had chosen her path. I was just walking off mine. By the time Jared found out what was happening, the walls were already closing in. His startup investor pulled out that same week. Quietly, efficiently. I didn't even have to make a second call. Doubt had done its work. Emilia stopped receiving text from him shortly after. I suspect he ghosted her, the same way cowards often do when the heat becomes real. Their bond, built on betrayal, was crumbling, not from confrontation, but from the slow, suffocating weight of consequence. I watched it all unfold, like someone watching a storm through bulletproof glass. Safe, detached, not immune to the wind, but untouched by it. Emilia made one last attempt at redemption. She suggested therapy, said we could work through it. I let her speak, let her spill her carefully crafted narrative. When she finished, I only asked, "When you were with him, did you ever once imagine how this would end?" She looked away. That was her answer. I never raised my voice. Not once. That's what seemed to unnerve her the most. The quiet. The absence of the drama she had prepared herself for. But I didn't want revenge in the form of screaming or door slamming. I wanted her to feel the weight of silence. The unbearable stillness of being removed from someone's life completely. No second chances. No parting monologue. Just the echo of what she lost. It was strange, watching them both fall apart. Jared lost his funding and his reputation. Emilia moved out within the week, taking only what I allowed. The wedding photos were never developed. The guests never heard the full story. And me, I returned to work the next day like nothing happened, because in my world, the storm had already passed. And I was still standing clean, clear, and unshaken. After she left, the house felt like a museum. Quiet, still, untouched. Every item she once obsessed over, every scented candle, every photo frame positioned just so, had lost its meaning. I didn't rush to clear it all out. I wanted the silence to linger, not because I missed her, but because I needed to understand how I had ignored the subtle erosion of trust for so long. I wasn't grieving a marriage. I was observing the wreckage of a beautifully packaged lie and letting it breathe before I buried it. Friends reached out, some curious, others concerned. I didn't explain much. I didn't need to. The people who truly knew me didn't ask for gossip. They watched how calm I was and understood everything, and the ones who asked too many questions, I cut them off gently. When you go through betrayal this precise, you realize how dangerous loose lips can be. I had no intention of ever letting Emilia or Jared control the narrative. Silence was my story now, and it was airtight. Jared tried to reach me once. A text, just one line. I never meant for it to go that far. I stared at it for a long while, then deleted it without reply. He wasn't apologizing. He was trying to ease his own guilt. That's the thing about betrayers. They rarely seek forgiveness for the right reasons. They want your silence, not your grace. And I wasn't going to give him either. I had already given too much. Now, I was reclaiming my peace in full. Amelia's family attempted contact too. Her father, who once toasted to our forever, left a voicemail offering to talk things out. I respected him, so I returned the call, but I kept it brief. "Your daughter made choices," I said calmly. "I'm just honoring mine." There was a long pause on the line, and then he sighed. "I understand," he said, and that was it. No fireworks, no explanations, just two men accepting that some things once broken stay broken. One evening, I came across the wedding guest book, still unsigned by most, still open to a page where someone had written, "Wishing you both a lifetime of honesty and devotion." I stared at those words like they were from another world. Then I shut the book and tossed it in the bin, not out of rage, but resolution. Some memories aren't worth keeping, not even as lessons. When something is rotten at the root, you don't frame it. You uproot it and let something better grow in its place. With every day that passed, I spoke her name less, thought of him less, felt more like myself again. Not the man who got married, but the man who walked away before a false life could really begin. That, I've realized, was the real ceremony. Not the wedding with champagne and speeches, but the quiet, deliberate exit. The divorce that wasn't an ending but a reclaiming, a return to myself. Stronger, smarter, and free. It's been 11 months since that night. People still ask carefully, respectfully, how I'm doing. My answer is always the same. I'm doing better than I planned. Not because I've moved on with someone new or escaped into distractions, but because I've rebuilt the foundation beneath me. I've done the quiet work, processing, healing, restoring the parts of myself I didn't realize had been shrinking just to make someone else comfortable. I didn't just walk away from a marriage. I walked back into my integrity. I renovated the house. Nothing drastic, just small changes that mattered. I repainted the bedroom, replaced the furniture, donated every gift we received together. The space breathes differently now. It belongs to me again. I kept only one item from that entire chapter. A photo of me and my mother, taken just minutes before the ceremony, her hand on my shoulder, her eyes steady. That photo reminds me of the one person who never wavered, the one voice I listened to when it mattered most. Jared moved to another city. From what I've heard, he lost most of his early investors and had to sell what was left of the company. I don't check on him. I don't need updates. His name is no longer tied to any corner of my life. That's the true revenge, when someone expects to live in your mind, rent-free, but instead finds the door locked, their presence forgotten. No final blow, no dramatic farewell, just the soft sound of nothing at all. As for Amelia, I know she's been trying to rebrand her story. I've heard the whispers, how she spins it as a misunderstanding, how she blames pressure, how she paints herself as confused. I've never corrected her. I don't need to, because truth, when handled with patience, always outlives the performance of lies. I didn't lose anything when I let her go. I regained everything she had quietly taken: my focus, my clarity, my self-respect. I've learned that betrayal doesn't ruin you, it reveals you. It introduces you to the version of yourself who doesn't chase closure, doesn't beg for explanations, doesn't let ego set fire to the house just to feel warm again. It shows you what kind of power you hold when you choose stillness over spectacle, when you walk away not to prove a point, but because peace has become more valuable than being right. So no, I don't hate her. I don't hate him. I thank them for reminding me that I'm the kind of man who can lose everything he thought he needed and still come out whole. Stronger, wiser, unbothered, and completely unapologetically free.